Hi everyone, you're watching the Film Whisperers on Bent TV, where two movie nerds talk all things film through a contemporary lens. My name is Matthew.
And I'm Saj.
So we've been talking a bit about, we've been focusing on movies from the 80s, which was, quite a golden era of everything really. I mean, as we were saying previously, a lot of things these days try to emulate the kind of essence of what the 80s was. But we've spoken about the ones that we really, really enjoyed. So movies in particular that have stood the test of time, but that still holds up today.
Sort of holds up today. Sort of.
Sort of holds up. Sorry, you're right. Sort of.
Yeah.
But now I thought we'd talk about ones that maybe haven't aged as well, or that wouldn't really be made in the same way today because they don't really reflect, what society is like, or they might just be a bit on, they may have not aged very well. So I'm curious, Saj, whether anything springs to mind. I mean, there's probably plenty of examples given it was decades ago, but whether anything springs to mind when you're thinking of something that hasn't aged well from the 80s.
I think no, Matt. I want you to go first because I want to hear yours first. Go on.
Yeah, I guess when I was in high school, obviously I was watching lots of teen movies, and as part of that, I was watching teen movies from across the decades. So Mean Girls, Clueless, Heathers, all the different ones, Jawbreaker. But as part of that, understandably, I kind of turned my attention to John Hughes movies because obviously in the 80s in particular, he was the king of teen movies. And, he brought out big movies like The Breakfast Club and 16 Candles and Pretty in Pink. And I'm going to put for this one, sadly, even though I know that they're quite highly regarded, I was going to choose The Breakfast Club. I know that it's like a classic teen movie, but I feel like watching it now, even though I appreciate the messages that it's trying to send, about these people from different walks of life, need to understand each other better and, not be so hard on each other. I mean, those walks of life that are represented in the movie are quite it's really just white people, like a white popular girl and a white athlete and a white, nerdy guy. And it's not even I imagine, even though I wasn't around in the 80s, I imagine even then, that wasn't reflective of what most people in America or anywhere else's experience of high school would be like. I mean, unless you went to an all white high school. So yeah, I feel and also, I mean, those kind of archetypes, the nerd and the jock and the whatever, I feel those are also quite dated as well. I mean, they might still exist in high schools today, but it's so much more diverse than that. So I feel that's probably one that hasn't aged probably as well. But what do you think?
I think this is always a challenge, right? And I guess this is why we do this show, to actually have a look at these movies with a contemporary lens. I remember watching The Breakfast Club when I was a teenager, and it blew my mind because it had been a while, even in the 90s, for teens to actually talk about their problems in such an articulate manner. The role of Anthony Michael Hall, who was meant to be the brain, the fact that he was failing because academically he didn't do well in one subject. And I mean, at the time, I could relate to that. However, it's really hard to still say that that's one of my favorite films because along with the stereotypes that exist in the movie, there's also one very inappropriate scene where the character of Bender, he definitely is a bit of sexual misconduct happening there with the Molly Ringwald character, where the scene that I'm talking about, yeah, which is. Yeah, it's quite.
Is he trying to get Is he trying to get a view of her? I feel I feel he's kind of sexually harassing her, right?
Correct. That's exactly right. And obviously that's incredibly problematic. With the exception of that and the stereotypes, I guess this is really hard because I want to defend the movie because of some of the groundbreaking things that they spoke about. And will they ever make a film like that in 2021? Hell no. And if they do, maybe they might update it, and the problems that people have would be different. Or maybe they won't be those stereotypes. But whenever there is a high school film, even in this decade, we still sort of see those characters just in different ways. They're just molded differently, but there's always a nerd. There's always the pretty princess. There's always a jock. So I don't know. So I feel as if maybe this film started that trend. I don't know.
Oh yeah, super influential, definitely. Like I think even like for decades since there have been movies that have like had those kind of archetypes in them, and I feel like Breakfast Club was like the iconic one from the '80s. So I think we can like simultaneously like acknowledge that the movie was quite groundbreaking and positive in the way that, like you said, it kind of depicted this kind of really frank and articulate conversation between teenagers about issues that they were going through. But then we can also be like, oh yeah, but it doesn't feel particularly like reflective of the reality of how diverse the teen population is and like what high school probably is like. So yeah, I think that would probably be my pick. But what about yourself? Like, what's one for you that hasn't aged very well?
Well, sticking to John Hughes, have you seen 16 Candles?
Oh, I have. I've seen it once. I watched it a very long time ago, but I have seen it once.
Okay, so look, I'm going to be honest here. When I saw it again, I was a teenager. I thought it was hilarious, and I thought, this is a really funny film. Depiction of high school. I thought was, the Molly Ringwald character was a hoot, and you watch it in 2021, and it is incredibly problematic. It's racist. The way it depicts toxic masculinity is just shocking, and it's just so inappropriate. And okay, with the Breakfast Club, I can see them doing some form of rendition in 2021. With 16 Candles, that script would be binned. It's just that bad.
Actually, because remind me, Saj, like I feel like I know that the basic story is that like her parents forgot her birthday, but I feel like there's also, I mean, one of the bits you're probably referring to is there's like I think a white actor playing like an Asian character or something like that. You tell me.
No,
like that.
No. So there is an Asian character in it. It's played by, I believe he's an Asian American. His name is Getty Watanabe. That's the actor's real name. And he plays a character called Long Duck Dong, and he's the Asian stereotype, and yeah, it's really bad. But then at the same time, there's a character of I think his name is Jake Ryan, who is this jock, and the way he speaks about women, what he does to women is shocking. There is a scene in this film where he gets his love interest, not Molly Ringwald, another popular girl in school. He gets her drunk, and then he goes and tells his nerd friend to go have fun with her.
Okay.
Wow. Like, it's just, like, what on earth was John Hughes thinking? Surely, even at the time, wasn't there anyone to say, this is not appropriate whatsoever? So, but hey, look, I watched it as a teenager. It just went over my head, So it's interesting that we are watching these films now and actually we're using a magnifying glass and actually looking at, well, hang on, this is very, very problematic and this is inappropriate. But I guess we were blinded by all of this back in the day.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, yeah, absolutely. I feel like maybe back then maybe that speaks to the fact that back then a lot of these kinds of like this kind of rape culture, for example, like in relation to that scene that you were talking about, like was just so accepted. Like I guess people were just like, oh yeah, like that'll be a funny joke, throw that in the script. Whereas today, some people might still feel that way, but I think the overwhelming majority of people are like, gosh, like, that is not okay. Like that's literally like, yeah, it's shocking. So yeah, it's interesting because there have been teen movies that have come out over the last decade or 2 decades that have been quite good, but I feel like there hasn't been like a John Hughes type auteur or director who's like churned out these like iconic teen movies. There might be like a great teen movie here and there, but John Hughes was very much like in a class of his own in the sense that I can't think of any other one else that's kind of like consistently done like these amazing considered incredible teen movies. So yeah, it's just an interesting time, a time capsule.
Yeah, well, true. I think we could talk about this forever, but it's time for us to wrap up. So thanks, Matt, once again. Always enjoyable. You've been watching the Film Whisperers here on Ben TV.